We're just going to kick off that discussion right now with small wars practitioner Andrew Franklin. Thanks so much for joining us, Andrew.
It's a pleasure.
Yeah, I guess the first place to kick off from is where Aaron Ocheng left off in his story about convincing Kenyans of the abilities of Major General Phillip Kameru. If you were sitting in a defense committee, what would be the one thing that you would ask him to answer before anything else?
Well, I would ask the general about his knowledge of the existing laws, specifically relating to the National Intelligence Service, and also the contents and how he will, in fact, reorganize the existing NIS so that, in fact, it is in compliance with the applicable law.
All right.
That is the National Intelligence Service Act passed in 2012.
Okay, but aside from that, personal qualities include his own knowledge of what military intelligence is versus national intelligence. The two might not exactly be fit in well together insofar as his being able to just step into the shoes of Michael Gichangi.
Well, I would suggest that for the Major General to be as the Director of Military Intelligence has already demonstrated a track record of being flexible and being able to learn increasing amounts of information and also deal with increasingly complicated situations, particularly on the battlefield, which, after, like it or not, since October 2011, the KDF has been on the battlefield.
And he's been the head of the military intelligence since Operation Linda Inchi took over. I guess my question should be, though, the difference between military intelligence and national intelligence.
The difference between military intelligence, which is essentially battlefield-oriented, it's about weapon systems, your opponents, the opponent's intentions, strengths and weaknesses, the ability also to gather facts, to analyze those facts, or to have your team analyze those facts and come up with a viable plan of action in a shorter period of time. National security, on the other hand, as in accordance with the National Intelligence Service Act, which encompasses economics. It does encompass foreign governments. It does enter into, or the general will have to cooperate with Foreign Affairs, Ministry of Foreign Affairs, as well as, because this being a relatively small country, the act does include a tremendous amount of domestic intelligence, transnational crime. And in fact, it's not so much that we tend to label an institution as if by the individual.
All right. Well, aside from that, though, I mean that there have been individual flaws in terms of the handling of national intelligence in the recent past, especially when it comes to insecurity. How strong on the ground would Major General Kameru need to be in order to face up to the challenges that we have currently?
Well, I believe that it's the ability to team lead, to co-opt other people, which is allowed by the Act. It's also the ability to think strategically, not just on what's happening tomorrow on the battlefield, and also, but leadership, and actually, and this is leadership, by the way, I think is where the media might come in on this. That is, if the media insists that the new law be implemented, that the new law be put into effect, and that the new Director General, that is his first task, is to in fact implement the law. Because without following the roadmap, reading the owner's manual, as it were, we're going to have additional attacks because we do a lot of finger pointing.
Speaking of attacks, actionable intelligence versus the kind of intelligence that the head of the military intelligence would deal with on a regular basis. How difficult or easy would it be for him to transfer his knowledge of the same and apply it to what's going on in terms of actionable intelligence? The recent past, given an example of Mpeketoni, we're told that there was intelligence. Was it actionable? Wasn't it? What kind of things is he going to be having to deal with?
Well, he's going to have to deal with a certain level of bureaucratic inertia. In other words, there may have been actionable intelligence regarding Mpeketoni and attacks on other foreign inhabited villages in Lamu. The question is, were there sufficient police to actually garrison, to go out on patrol? Were they sufficiently trained? And as I've said in other venues, the fact that we don't have a national police service in accordance with the act passed in 2011 means that you can have intelligence about attacks. You can come up with ideas that something may be happening.
Yeah.
But if the police cannot respond because they're not organized to respond in accordance with their own act,
Yeah.
then I think that's when the Director General of Intelligence, of National Security, National Intelligence Service, that is,
Yeah.
has to stand up
And say
in
something.
private, of course, at State
Right.
House and say, this is, sir, this is what we must have.
Okay, fine. Finally, Andrew, as we wind up, there's also another argument here that we have to deal with. Intelligence informing policy, especially again with regards security. Just about 2-3 days ago, Human Rights Watch released a damning report about extrajudicial execution as a strategy to stem terrorism. Where would the role of intelligence be in being able to form the right kind of policy in fighting in this war on terror?
Well, all the security agencies, and in particular National Intelligence Service, are tasked with upholding the Constitution of 2010, which we all know has very strong human rights provisions. And in fact, but keep in mind, the Independent Police Oversight Authority is a separate independent agency designed to curb police abuses. Because what you're referring to with these extrajudicial killings is the anti-terror police unit,
yes.
Police unit, part of the police. And these are things that have to be coordinated. Essentially, the Director General of National Intelligence Service can certainly throw his weight in there and say, look, we have to get our information straight. Because, in fact, the ATPU, the Anti-Terror Police Unit, will be operating
Based
with a
on
mix of intelligence about who's coming across the borders, who's coming through the airports, who's coming across the beaches.
All right.
But they are, after all, part of the police,
All right.
National Police Service.
Andrew, I think that we're going to have to end it. There are lots of questions for Major General Phillip Kameru in coming days, of course. I hope you'll be joining us to try and look at all of these questions and see whether he is the right man for the job. So thank you very much for joining us tonight on
pleasure indeed.
KTN Prime.